All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce Jack Lavin, our President and CEO, to get us started today.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jack Lavin, President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us for today's session about taking flight, the state of air travel. I'm very excited about today's program and our panelists, and we have a great turnout today. I want to first thank Jamie Reed, the city's Aviation Commissioner, for moderating today's virtual panel. Jamie, the last time we had you at a chamber event was our last in-person board meeting in February. Seems like a lifetime ago. I also want to thank Dave Harvey of Southwest Airlines, Dan Lynch of United Airlines, and Franco Tedeschi of American Airlines for participating on our panel today. We'll formally introduce them in a moment and look forward to their thoughts on the state of business travel today. They are longtime members of the Chamber and our Board of Directors, and we greatly appreciate their partnership. As you all know, the airline industry, like so many others, has been battered by the global pandemic. In Illinois, we have seen a 51% reduction in scheduled passenger flights from last year, as many companies continue to work remotely and limit business travel among their employees. Here in Chicago, we all understand that a healthy and robust airline industry is fundamental to our future recovery. That's why the Chamber is working with our congressional delegation and partners at the national level to continue pressing the federal government for additional CARES Act relief, including the Payroll Support Program and Expanded Payroll Protection Program, to get people back to work and keep them in their jobs. That's also why we specifically called out the airlines and the transportation more broadly as the key enabler to fully reopening Chicagoland's economy, which we talked about in the reopening report the Chamber published back in June. That report was an initiative of the Chamber's COVID-19 Economic Recovery Task Force, along with the follow-up virtual information sessions like this one today. Dan Lynch was one of the members of that task force. A key word from the reopening report was trust. Trust in a safe workplace, trust in a safe travel industry. As we continue to reopen more segments of our economy and build that trust, it's also important to separate fact from fiction when assessing whether it's safe to fly again. That's a reasonable question that many of our members have asked, and today we want an opportunity for you to hear directly from the carriers and their new and innovative strategies to safely fly again. So let's get started. First, you'll get a chance to hear an update from the city's aviation chief, Jamie Reed, and then we'll go into a panel to hear about the various measures being taken by the airlines to ensure the safety of passengers from the moment they arrive at the airport to when they disembark at their destination. To kick things off, I'd like to welcome Jamie Reed, Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Aviation. In this role, Commissioner Reed manages one of the world's busiest airport systems, which includes O'Hare and Midway Airport, which in a typical year serves more than 100 million passengers, cementing Chicago's role as a global leader for passenger and air cargo activity. Chicago's airports are also among the most connected in the world, serving more than 260 locations worldwide. Our airports are an economic engine that gives the Chicagoland economy one of our greatest competitive advantages. Jamie, thank you for being here today. And Jamie's been a great friend for many years in helping build the economy and make sure that our business community has this economic engine and it works great for everyone. Passengers, businesses, travelers. Jamie, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jack, for the warm introduction and for all that you do for the Chicagoland Chamber. This is such a wonderfully effective organization, and it's critical in this timely conversation that I know is at the forefront of everyone's mind and for so many of your members. It cuts across so many of the industries that power our regional economy. And on behalf of Mayor Lightfoot and the entire Chicago CDA team, it's a privilege to be with you here to facilitate this important conversation. So soon you'll be hearing from the representatives of the three major carriers that operate in Chicago: Southwest, our anchor tenant at Midway, United and American, O'Hare's principal airlines, and they're fierce competitors outside these walls. or Zoom screens. But to me and the wider Chicago aviation community, they are tremendous partners. And so I appreciate them being here today. And it is their great partnership to our airport system that we value so much. I think it's a true testament to the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce that these three competitors have agreed to be here today for an unvarnished conversation about the state of air travel in the COVID-19 era. We can all agree that these are abnormal times, and the question persists: when will we return to normal? Or is this the new normal? Airlines and airports certainly have a vested interest in people returning to the skies. But as the Chamber well knows, it's also critical for hotels and restaurants and our cultural institutions. The list of affected industries and sectors is practically endless. But before we can return to normal, restoring consumer confidence is a necessity. And we're going to hear more about those efforts in a moment. First slide. Let me take a moment to walk through a very brief but incredibly disruptive history of COVID-19 on the aviation industry. In the earliest stages, when it was thought to be a problem confined to the other side of the globe, our airports were nevertheless making critical preparations. And in fact, as early as January, we were working with the CDC and CBP to stand up an enhanced health screening facility at O'Hare, which was selected to be a feeder airport for travelers returning from COVID hotspots. Obviously, once the virus spread to the United States, disruption quickly followed. By the spring, with infections spreading largely unchecked and local regional governments' restrictions taking root, commercial air travel screeched to a halt. Passenger demand bottomed out in mid-April when the TSA screened approximately 87,500 travelers nationwide on April 14th. On a normal day, that number is above 2 million. Since that time, passenger levels here and around the country have slowly been ticking back up. About 967,000 travelers were screened on Friday before Labor Day here in Chicago. But we're still seeing less than half of the 2019 passenger loads. IATA research has confirmed similar trends outside the United States, with passenger demand recovering rapidly in May and June of 2020, after bottoming out in April and then plateauing in June, July, and August. And most of us, I imagine, have seen the recent headlines. No airport or airline has been ineffective. And as collective industry, we're making meaningful changes to address our new reality. CDA's goal, and the one that requires cooperation across the board, is for our travelers to feel safe and secure from the moment they leave for the airport until they arrive at their destination. Next slide. Fundamentally, we have no higher priority than the safety and well-being of the traveling public and our airport community, and we've been hard at work to make that so. At both airports, our COVID-19 recovery plan aligns carefully with public health guidelines. We are eager to inform the public and raise awareness of the new travel experience, as well as be able to receive insight into evolving passenger expectations. The primary driver of this effort is our Reconstitution task force, which is a little bit of a misnomer in that we never actually closed down. The task force brings together representatives from every facet of the airport ecosystem to ensure a coordinated approach and open communications. The Reconstitution task force brings together our federal, state, and local partners, including the representatives from the Mayor's Office, the Chicago Department of Public Health, our partners at the FAA, CDC, CBP, TSA, our airlines, concessionaires, and many other airport stakeholders. Several committees and working groups have been established, and we're working diligently to reconnect the world to Chicago and Chicago to the world. Here's what you can expect to see, next slide, at the airport. Face coverings are required at all times in our terminals. Enhanced cleaning practices have been put in place, and seating in common areas have been retrofitted to promote social distancing. Access to the terminals has been restricted to ticketed passengers with airport business, which helps minimize traffic in our landside areas. CDA has also installed hundreds of additional hand sanitizing stations at both airports. Many of our airline and concession tenants, as well as the TSA, have installed plexiglass barriers at checkpoints, desks, and kiosks. Restaurant and retailers have increased the amount of touchless technology. This includes QR codes for contactless menus, mobile ordering, and payment. In partnership with the city's COVID-19 task force and Choose Chicago, the city's destination marketing organization, CDA created 5 Things to Know Before You Go video that highlights enhanced safety measures and the new travel experience. A dedicated COVID-19 Microsoft exists on our flychicago.com website. Also, a huge shout out this morning to Choose and everyone involved in our city's great hospitality industry. For the 4th year in a row, we were named the best big city in the US by the readers of Condé Nast Traveler. In our airports, passengers and staff are reminded of social distancing guidelines and other protective measures through floor decals, static and digital signing, and public announcements, which have been translated into several different languages. Next slide. We've also established a customer experience program to assist on site. Since June, more than 50 volunteers at both airports have been roaming the terminals as customer service ambassadors. So far, these ambassadors have spent nearly 2,000 volunteer hours in our concourses, distributing face coverings and encouraging travelers to wear masks correctly and to social distance, especially in the concession queues. Another effort to improve customer service is through the new customer service feedback and travel readiness surveys. These will allow us to monitor passenger confidence and feedback to improve the customer experience throughout both airports. And while we've had a significant challenge ahead in rebuilding passenger confidence in air travel, we all know that every segment of our industry is committed to meeting this challenge and restoring the travel industry to its position as one of the world's largest employers and creators of economic growth. And with that, I'm going to stop talking. Next slide, please, and turn the floor over to our panelists. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. And then as an icebreaker of sorts, let's give a high-level overview of what your airlines are doing to address passenger and employee safety. So Franco, you won the coin toss and deferred to the second half. So Dave, we're going to start with you. Dave is Vice President of Southwest Business at Southwest Airlines. Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I genuinely hope everyone is safe and well. We just all have to be vigilant. Public service address, I'm saying this to myself probably more than anybody else, but wash hands, wear masks. We'll kind of get through this together. Everything that you've heard from Jack and Jamie, it's very similar to what's going on at Southwest. This has been an absolute gut punch to all of the airlines. We're absolutely in a fight of our lives. And I loved what Jack was saying just about trust and what the chamber and that report, and this is really about trust with the consumer. Right now, there's a lot of lack of confidence out there in coming into the airport environment and coming on board an aircraft. And we have to all do our part to make sure we've got the right cleanliness and distancing protocols in place to keep the travelers safe so that they're not taking any undue risk. And I would submit to all of you that it's safer going into an airport or an airplane right now. Your local grocery store, your local restaurant, hardware store. So Southwest is really, we've gone to market with our Southwest Promise, multi-layered approach, 6 to 7 hours of cleaning every night of every plane, electrostatic spraying, HEPA air filters. One of the biggest component of that is the onboard distancing. So blocking middle seats. Right now we're out there through the end of November for your Thanksgiving travel just to provide a little bit of that distancing. And we're going to continue to evolve, and we're focused on temperature checks and contact tracing and everything we can do to continue to make sure folks are safe and well flying Southwest. Thank you, Jamie.
Great, thanks. Dan Lynch, Vice President of State and Local Government Affairs at United Airlines. Dan?
Thank you, Jamie, and thanks for moderating us today and for your partnership. And I also just want to say thanks to Jack and the Chamber for hosting this event today and allowing us the opportunity to talk to everybody. But more importantly, for everything the Chamber's done and continues to do to get Chicago back on the path to recovery in the midst of all this chaos. I would say from United's perspective, we're squarely focused on the same mission, managing through this difficult situation, protecting our employees and our customers, and trying to put ourselves in the best position possible to rebound when the recovery does happen. But as Dave said, make no mistake, this pandemic has had a devastating impact on the airlines, on the whole aviation industry, on our airports, O'Hare and Midway here in Chicago. It's really been a challenging 7 months, but I'd have to say last week might have been the most difficult period for many of us. Certainly here at United, we had to say goodbye to more than 13,000 United coworkers who were furloughed. And then there's tens of thousands more who are facing reduced hours, who are taking voluntary leaves. This is a moment we had hoped to avoid, and we had certainly done everything in our power to avoid it. And yet the day of reckoning still came. But listen, I know we're not alone. I know many of you who are watching here today, chamber members, businesses, employees who are experiencing similar hardships. And as Dave said, I think we have to get through this together, and we have to focus on the future. And so for United, our path to recovery, and make no mistake, we do believe there will be a recovery, we're counting on it, is to double down on health and safety, because we have to make our customers feel confident about traveling again. So what does that mean? It means we're wearing masks at the airport and on board our aircraft. That's non-negotiable. We're using hospital grade air filters, as Dave said, on our aircraft, and we're employing advanced disinfectant techniques, both in our gate areas, for our employee hold rooms, at our airports, but also on our airplanes in between every flight. I certainly hope that you all, your employees and your customers, can't wait to start flying again. And we know that a safe and clean flying experience is the ticket to welcoming you back. So again, I look forward to getting into this a little bit more in the panel portion of the event here, but just want to say thanks again. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel today.
Great, thank you, Dan. And Franco Tedeschi, Vice President for Chicago, Europe, Asia, Pacific at American Airlines. Franco?
Thank you, Jamie, and good afternoon, everyone. And to my colleagues at the Chicagoland Chamber, thank you for allowing this opportunity for each of us to talk about the steps that we're taking. But before we talk about the steps, I too would like to extend my best wishes for you and your families and loved ones at this time. And I hope and pray that they're as safe as one could hope for. Look, there's been so many headlines, so many breaking news articles, and the truth is what we get to do is bring that to an understanding so that our customers, our team members, ultimately communities that we look to support and serve can feel and sense, I would say, a trust that we're creating. Statements that have been made include that it's safe to fly. Well, the truth is we can tell someone it's safe to fly, but they have to feel safe. That's what we have to do. We have to have the ability to create, if you will, a seamless travel experience and a COVID-19 response that is correct. And we're doing that. We're doing that as partners, right? If you listen to my colleagues who have given an overview of their respective airlines, we're not looking to compete. We're looking to be correct. As an industry, we're looking to stimulate travel. We're looking to become a safe passage to connect the world. And do our part globally and economically. Our city, our proud city of Chicago that I'm tremendously fond of, has messaged that the airports, Chicago Midway, are the transportation engine of the city. So what better way than for all of us to mobilize jointly and efficiently and effectively? I want to applaud the Department of Aviation. I think we saw through the Commissioner's overview of the necessary and much accomplished work that's taken place to ensure the customer is interpreting the measures that we've taken. At American, look, we're in a strong position from an air fleet. We have the youngest fleet in the industry, which says that every aircraft with 50 seats or more has the HEPA filters on board. Those allow for filtration on the airplane every 2 to 4 minutes. It's the safest air circulation systems that you can have. In addition to that, the multiple layers of protection that we've included in our customer journey, our team members journey. We did not have a playbook for any of this, ladies and gentlemen. We've had to take guidance from the experts, and those experts are not necessarily American. They're the scientists, they're the medical experts. We're proud of our partnership with Vanderbilt, and they've allowed us to implement the, I would say, necessary steps that's allowed our airline to manage through a response that is in many ways short term. You've heard that said by our colleagues already. There will be a recovery, but we have to endure the moment that we're in. We've had difficult decisions to make. As I look back at, April, which was our lowest point in terms of travel and activity, it's encouraging to see some of the activity we saw in our airports around Labor Day. And that indicates that customers are willing to take flight. They're willing to connect to their loved ones. They want to stimulate business. Our purpose is to bring our economy together again, support our business leaders who, I will tell you, have supported our industry very much so at this airport. And I'm appreciative of that. And I represent our airline with a lot of pride doing so today. So thank you.
Thank you. And Franco, I think we'll just stick with you. You just brought it up and others have as well about the recovery. We all know that the commercial aviation industry is resilient, especially here in Chicago. And at the same time, industry downturns occur regularly and that the pace of recovery is not certain. If we benchmark the pandemic in terms of other industry downturns that we've all lived through, for instance, the industry took 7 years to recover from the 2008 financial crisis and 3 years to recover from the 9/11 attacks. Franco, what are your thoughts on the recovery timeline?
Yeah, thank you. It's an excellent question, and history is going to serve as well. The truth, though, is there was no history book on COVID-19 and a global impact, right? So we have to be thoughtful about what recovery will look and feel like. And our industry is going to allow us an opportunity, right? We have several assets. The first asset we have are our people. And we need to think thoughtfully about how we bring our people back to work and gainful employment. My colleague Dan talked about the difficult work that United had to undertake last week, and we were a similar, play in that. And it's heart-wrenching when people have no choice. We enjoy the world when people are offered an opportunity and they decide what's right for them and their families. So as I take my place every day, it's to return those good men and women to work. However, the reality is this is going to be a recovery that's going to be, stepped as opposed to a long reach. We're going to have to be thoughtful about how we take those steps. We've got multiple restrictions that are in place that prohibit, access across borders in foreign countries. So clearly we see an opportunity domestically. And as we see that opportunity, we need to stimulate the right level of travel on our airplanes, right? We have to get the business community flying again, those customers that are looking to commit, commercially. And that's really critical for our long-term existence. Furthermore, what we need to do is be smart about how we fly our second asset, which is our airplane. We have to be thoughtful about where customers and business individuals want to go to complete their work. And we need to work, smartly and with a level of purpose around creating passage between those 2 points. And they could be domestic, they could be international. But that's really important. And then last, when we think about lessons learned from the past, this too will allow us to become more resilient, more resourceful in terms of how we're expensing. We have to be thinking about what are the customer values at this time. Customers want a safe and reliable travel experience. They want us to bring them function to purpose. And therefore, we shouldn't over-engineer things. We shouldn't overcomplicate them. We need to get away from the headlines, and we need to make things understood so that we can stimulate travel as business resumptions continue to move in the right direction. And lastly, and most importantly, we need to be good citizens in our community. We can't do this work alone. We have got to reach out and say, what are we not doing that we need to do? And I feel that that's what today's providing needs to hear, the questions that come forward. And as well as I feel about all the things we've done here at American and across the industry, we have work to do, and we're not absent, acceptance of that work as we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Franco. Dave, how about Southwest perspective?
Yes, absolutely. And you heard a little of this earlier with April. If you just think about overall demand and recovery, the industry was essentially down 97, 98% in April. For the full second quarter, it was kind of in that 95% range down year over year. And then if you just kind of look at the TSA security checkpoint, folks moving through TSA, the industry's down about 70%. Still today, kind of coming into the fourth quarter. So it is going to be a long road to recovery. Southwest directionally for 2020, we're on pace to produce revenues that we did in 2006 when we were 300 less aircraft and tens of thousands less employees. So, there's a 2021 solve. All the airlines are under immense pressure to get our daily cash burns back to break even as fast as possible. So that's all about matching capacity to demand, doing all the things you heard from Franco about trust, making sure your network is oriented. You've got flexible funds and reuse of tickets and the safety and distancing things we've talked about. And you really have to weather the storm. There's roughly about 50% of the flying public that from everything we're talking about, cleanliness and distancing and a low fare, that is not going to convince them to get back on a plane until we have much more advanced therapeutics or a widespread vaccine distribution, which, everybody's looking into their crystal ball thinking that's probably sometime mid-year next year. And without that population of traffic, there just is not enough demand out there to support all the major airlines. So it's going to be weather the storm. It's going to be choppy, and then figure out where you deploy your resources to capture and rebound in the recovery.
Thanks, Dave. Dan, I'd love to hear your thoughts from United's perspective.
Sure. Thanks, Jamie. And listen, I think Franco and Dave covered it really well. I would just say, I don't think anybody expected it to be as bad as it is, as it has been, or that this would last as long as it has and possibly will, going into the future. I think back to when this all started to happen in late February and early March. And, I think the prevailing thought was this will take a couple months and, we'll be back in action. And here we are 7 months later. And more importantly, the future is uncertain. I think, as Dave said, the prevalence of a vaccine is going to be a critical factor in the recovery. So, hoping that gets out into the market as soon as possible. But in the meantime, we're on our own, and we have to pursue these health and safety measures that we're talking about to build that trust and build that confidence for our customers. And then, from a business side, we just have to manage smartly through this crisis. And that means being flexible. It means, being aggressive on the financial side and cutting costs and raising capital to have the liquidity to survive what is an uncertain, future here. And it also means, as accurately as possible, matching our capacity with demand. And more importantly, being nimble as that demand profile, changes or starts to rebound. I think all of us are in the same boat. We want to be able to flip that light switch if it ever does happen that way, flip that switch so that we're back in action if demand does go up quickly. That's our hope, but obviously we're prepared if it does take longer. So I think that's where we're at.
Well, Dan, and on that same vein, I don't want to get too political or anybody in trouble, but it's fair to say that, there has been limited guidance on, and it's sort of piecemeal, on safety protocols coming from the federal government. We work very closely with our FAA partners and other airports, and I know that it's been sort of a patchwork of different regulations that have come out. And very isolated. How has this compounded the challenges that your airline is facing, and how are you responding, Dan?
Yeah, thank you. And I won't focus on any one area of government. I would actually just say it's the totality of the whole situation that has been a challenge, and it has no doubt compounded the situation. And listen, we're in uncharted territory. There was no roadmap, as Franco said earlier, for how to approach this. So everybody's been in a position to sort of, figure this out as we go along. But the fact that there are different rules of the road at every level, international, federal, state, and local, has made this extremely challenging. No two jurisdictions are approaching this the same way. That is my worst nightmare in my job, handling state and local government affairs, having a patchwork of 50 to 100 different rules for an industry like ours that operates across the country is very, very difficult. And let me just say that there's no doubt that the international travel restrictions and the domestic quarantine orders have had an impact on travel demand. And so I think, you know, what we have had to focus on as an airline, but as an industry, is setting our own sort of standards. And while you may hear different things from each of us, as a general rule, it's all pretty consistent. That has been how we have tried to focus on cutting through the chaos of the different rules and regulations. So, you know, that's the position we're in today, and that's the way we're going to have to focus our way through this in the future, because it does not appear that situation is really going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. Franco, I know that you and I have, thanks Dan, I know that you and I have, we've had a lot of conversations about customer service, and I know that you have a robust infrastructure in place. You know, same question to you, Franco. You know, the response so far, how has that impacted your operations?
Yeah, look, I mean, so first, you know, keep in perspective, in many cases, we're having customers come into an airport to take flight for the first time. So what they've been doing is hearing, you know, all of the information has been, you know, on all the media channels, rightly so, but it's information that then needs to be understood. So what we do is validate the experience that we're telling the customer is going to take place, number one. So when you get to that consistency, we need to think about what happens in Chicago, and then when the customer gets to their destination and leaves that destination to return home, is there a sense of inconsistency? And that's where Dan rightly said, we shouldn't be looking to compete here. We should be, you know, if you will, assembled in a way that's consistent and unified. And my example in this is, you know, going through for TSA screening. Look at how our nation and how the world, you know, prepared a response to 9/11. We didn't do it day one, but progressively put screening measures in place. And is there an advantage between one airport and one airline for a moment in time? Maybe. But the truth is, at some point, we're in a nation now that everyone gets screened. Everyone will go through a screening process before they join an airplane for departure. So that's what we're focused on. I think, you know, I messaged earlier, we've done a lot of work with medical experts to ensure that what we message to our customers, what we're asking our team members to do, it's not something that Americans conceiving as a possible solution. It's with expertise. And that's where we're taking the guidance. And next to that, you know, if we're honest, we work collectively, right? There's a lot of things that you and I have discussed, Jamie, and we've done them in a collaborative way. As much as we'll compete in many ways commercially, I want, you know, my fellow airlines to succeed, because when we stimulate travel, we'll let the customer decide who they want to fly and why, but we shouldn't feel that it's less safe on one versus another, because that is not going to create the outcome that we need. And likewise, if our airport's safe for one team member, it should be safe for all of them. And that's how I feel. And lastly, I would say that we have begun, you know, seeing some traction with the Airlines for America, where we're starting to see some conversations be, you know, broader in terms of their intent and looking for consistency in how we reach resolution to issues and concerns that are coming forward on an hourly basis as we respond to COVID-19.
Great, thank you, Franco. And Dave, from Southwest perspective, I mean, are there things that we could be doing together? I know the airlines working together through American A4A and ACI, they've partnered on, you know, looking at ways to standardize across the industry. From Southwest perspective, how's that going? And are there other things that we could be working on together?
Yeah, very much aligned with comments from Dan and Franco. A4A has and will continue to be a huge instrument to try to drive that alignment. Clearly, as you think about trying to meet all these different needs, you know, CDC has had much more expanded reach, and there's kind of global kind of direction there, as well as geographic. You know, we work closely with A4A. We've got both the FAA and the DOT requirements, and then just similar to our our other airline brethren here, you form strategic partners with medical professionals or university medical centers just to kind of bounce a lot of these things that we're doing from a health, wellness, and safety off of them to make sure we're doing the right thing. You know, one specific example, but it gives you the sense. So right now, mainland to Hawaii flying starts on October 15th. And that's a one-off solve for what that looks like for the rapid testing and the sign-off and how the oversight of all that. And then that's even being done at different solutions by different California airports for that mainland flying. And that's the world we live in. And earlier I heard the word, you have to be adaptable and flexible, and you have to be ready on the dime to meet the need of your employees and your customers. So the last thing I would just say there, and I think this probably speaks for all of the American and United employees as well, especially our frontline teams, our flight attendants, our ground teams, our pilots. You just cannot say enough about the way they have stepped up to take care of themselves and take care of our customers. Their communications have changed weekly, their protocols have changed weekly, and they have just really taken it all in stride and just provided incredible service.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about the news of furloughs and layoffs and those, obviously the impact that has on our city and the people that live here. You know, we are actively pursuing, and I know A4A is very aggressive, as is ACI, on, you know, another stimulus package. Could you tell me a little bit, Dan, on, you know, some of your thoughts around that, and you know, how important is that that we get some type of relief, you know, for the carriers going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. It's critical. I mean, it was critical when we got the first payroll support program 6 months ago. You know, saved hundreds of thousands of jobs in the airline industry. And listen, you know, I think you touched on it earlier, airports, airlines, the whole aviation ecosystem is really an economic engine, if not the economic engine that drives the economy. And there are a lot of flow on economic benefits that come with that. And so, you know, on the one hand, I know it's difficult to think, well, why should one industry get support? First and foremost, I think a lot of industries should get support, right? We're all going through this together, but the airline industry certainly has that amplifying economic impact, which is why I think Congress and the administration recognized how critical it was to bolster our industry. And so going forward, I think we were all pushing really hard, and we were all very hopeful that a deal could have been struck so that we could have avoided the furloughs that we had to announce. Unfortunately, we had to move forward with those, but that does not change our commitment to continuing to negotiate and advocate for an extension of the payroll support program. And if and when we get that, hopefully that's soon, we will pull back those furloughs and welcome all those employees back to work. That's what we remain focused on, and that's what we remain committed to.
Great. We're going to continue to aggressively advocate for that, because you've said it right. It is, the airports are ecosystems where many industries come together and has a huge impact on our city and our region. Franco, from American's perspective.
Yeah, look, I would underscore literally word for word what Dan shared, but I will underscore the following for American. Look, we're grateful for the assistance that the initial PSP allowed for those team members. We remain with a level of hope, as many others do, that the door is not closed. And we've been very vocal about the action we had to take last Thursday and Friday at American, affecting you know, thousands of our fellow colleagues, people that have served the airline for years and served it well and with pride. And we want to return them to workplace as soon as we can. But the best path forward is one that also allows this airline to exist going forward. So that also is another path that we need to not ignore. So we have to stabilize the airline, ensure that we're financially sound, and we're also using good judgment in how we take that next step. So said differently, we have to care about those that are still here, and we have to work extra hard for those that want to come back. And that's the message we need to convey. I would also re-message from my voice that it's been very clear the important role that the air transportation industry has across the globe. And it will continue to be that way as we think about stimulating economies, but more so in the short term, we think about a vaccine and mobilizing vaccine production across the globe, distribution. Air transportation is going to be a key critical path to how quickly we can make that happen. You know, look, I'll tell you, we have work ahead of us, but it's work that we're capable of delivering on. And if we stay connected, we're going to succeed here. And we should let our voice be heard. Washington is still awake. They're waiting for us. So please, if you haven't done so, step up, let your voice be heard. Thank you.
And Dave from Southwest, are you optimistic that we'll see a bill sometime soon?
Man, that's the $1 million or $1 billion question right there. I mean, we were so thankful for the first round of support. I think to Dan's point, nobody had any iota of it was going to be this deep and this long. So it flat out wasn't enough and long enough. And that's what the airlines have really kind of been working with all the political constituents. You know, October 1 came and went last week. To your question, Jamie, the farther we get away from October 1, I actually think it becomes riskier and riskier. There's the full bill, there's a skinny bill, there could be an executive order. There's even scenarios where something could happen right after election, depending on you know, which side were to win. So nothing can replace that level of support. Everything I would echo on the economic engine and kind of the extended performance that the airline industry and the airports bring. And we actually had a major announcement last night. We have never had a layoff or a furlough in our 50 years. Our CEO, Gary Kelly, was kind of giving it last Thursday and Friday, but yesterday we announced pay reductions for all non-contract. And essentially all of our contract groups, all those collective bargaining groups have until the end of October to come up with a way to cut 10% for all of 2021, or we will, for the first time in our history, have to go down the furlough path. So we're as close to the brink as we've ever been. We're strong. We think we're going to weather the storm, but we're having to take actions never contemplated.
Absolutely. And we're very thankful for our legislators locally here and those in Washington that really fight hard and understand the impact that this is having on our industry. So very thankful for that. Let's switch gears a little bit and get personal. We've touched on it a little bit, but many travelers and probably many people on this call have not stepped onto an aircraft since March. And there's understandably fear and uncertainty in that experience. You've told a little bit, but if there's something more personal to each of your airlines, I'd love to hear of what you're doing individually to reassure them. Franco, you want to start?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Look, first I'll begin with my team. They're the face of the airline. They're the first welcome that you receive, and they're indicating the correctness that they want to have our customers, respond to, which is the face coverings, the plexiglass shields that we've prepared to protect both customer and team member. You look at the floor markings in support with the CDA we've been able to position that says, okay, this is where I need to be, and I feel like I'm doing the right thing. And all the way through the touch points of the customer journey at the airport, we've created a level of correctness. I'll tell you, our airport looks clean. It looks ready to welcome our guests. You get on our airplane, and we've invested money at a time when money is not available in how we're cleaning our airplanes. And we've always cleaned airplanes. The difference is that we are cleaning them with a discipline and an approach that's never been, I would say, addressed at American, and I'll other airlines speak for themselves. But we're putting multiple hours of cleaning on dayline turns, our overnight clean. And we're proud that, literally about 30 days ago, we were able to receive environmental agency approval for Surface-Wise 2 application, which is electric static, fogging of the aircraft, which creates a disinfectant antibacterial, coating, and it allows for the protective measures that we can have access to today. Are they going to be, all inclusive, that they will eliminate COVID-19? No, they won't. But you know what? It is a significant protective barrier that we're creating, in addition to the multiple other layers of protection that are on the airplane. And we'll continue to make, thoughtful investments on how we service our customers. But we're also going to, require our customers to have shared responsibility in how they travel with us. And therefore, our face mask policy was not coincidental. It was intended for the safe and well-being of all customers on airplanes, as to the crew members. And, it was said earlier, we had crew members who were taking flight on airplanes, but we were still trying to understand what COVID-19 was really going to do as an impact. And they put a uniform on and allowed people to repatriate from foreign lands to the US. They allowed, medical equipment to be shipped. So look, we've indicated that it's safe to fly, but we have to take the necessary steps. And what we're doing with those steps now is visualizing for our customers as they come into our terminals. And we're also, by the way, spending a lot of time with our sales colleagues, letting people who are not ready to fly today know what we're doing, so that when they prepare their plans for travel, they'll remember what they saw and what they should experience.
Thank you. And Dan, I know you guys have done a lot with emerging technology as well, with some partnerships, really creative and unique partnerships.
Yeah, thank you. And I would just say, to your question, nothing is more personal than your own safety and well-being, right? So, that's why you're hearing so much about all the steps that we're all taking. But at United, as this pandemic evolved and it was clear that health and safety was going to be the key here, we formed a partnership called United Clean Plus with the Cleveland Clinic and Clorox to bring in a number of innovations, all across the board, many of which I've already talked about. But I think, making sure that the health and safety measures are at the forefront, not only for our employees, because that is key, as Franco and Dave have both said. I mean, we've got people on the front lines and they need to feel safe just as much as our customers do. But doing things to also make our customers feel safe is critical. And I would just say, again, sticking with the personal theme, speaking from personal experience, I have flown probably at least a half a dozen times since this pandemic started. It's my job, to be sure, but I would just say to everyone listening that if you haven't flown, I think you will be pleasantly surprised. I think you will be pleased with all the steps that the airports have taken and pleased with all the steps the airlines have taken. And I think in many ways, how do I say this? It's almost like the new normal, right? I mean, assuming you're getting out of the house and you're being safe about the way you go about your business, I think you'll find the same thing with the airport and the airline experience.
Great. And Dave, Southwest has been an incredible partner over at Midway. How, from Southwest's perspective?
Yeah, thank you. And actually just a big plug, we look at some of those strategic business markets to bring our schedule back as fast as we possibly can. Chicago Midway was at the top of that list, one of our largest operations in our entire network. We know that's super important to all of your businesses. But, at the end of the day, all of us as airlines, we're in the people business. And, for Southwest specifically, we look at ourselves as a customer service business, and we just happen to fly airplanes. So now you put yourself in the shoes of the flight attendant who is known for kind of legendary hospitality, warmth, friendliness, and you have a mask, you have plexiglass, you have all these, fairly rigid policies for all the right reasons, limited in-flight service, so less interactions. So how do you deliver that hospitality in the environment? So there's a lot of things that we've done, just basic motherhood and apple pie. Like, how do you deliver warmth in your messaging, because people are on edge on the plane in this environment? So how do you kind of get those force fields down and kind of diffuse the situation? Things like, how do you smile with your eyes when you welcome a customer? So it's a lot of body language. It's a lot of just changing the communications, definitely a lot of technology we've talked about. And the fascinating thing, we track something called NPS, Net Promoter Score. A lot of companies do. And if you survey folks, you can see if this is their first flight post-COVID, and they are very nervous, they're apprehensive, and then they take that flight. Into Dan and Franco's examples, once you fly, that experience completely exceeds their expectations going in. You get comfortable with wearing the mask for a little bit more extended period, but everything else is great. And then you survey them again after their trip, and the scores are through the roof. We're seeing some all-time high Net Promoter Scores once they experience. We just need to get more people experiencing it, more word of mouth, building that trust, that confidence. And I think America in general is just we cannot turn a blind eye to COVID. It is so dangerous and deadly, but I think we're getting smarter about how to live, and you're seeing that confidence kind of exude in the airport journey as well.
That's great. And thank you all very much. It looks like we have a few questions from the audience that I'd like to touch on right now for all the panelists. And in true Chicago Inform and Chamber, they've asked, in addition to actually flying, what are other things that they can do to help our airlines? And then if there were any notable things you could highlight on international travel. And Franco, given your recent promotion, and congratulations, that world traveler question might be a good one for you. That's right. And then also, again, what else can we do?
Yeah, thank you. Look, first, what can we do if we're not flying? The first thing we need to do is be informed, right? And maybe this is an opportunity for you to get insight to what the airlines have been doing, what the airports are doing, and share that information with others. And look, we are, in the service business. I think it was said really well earlier. We fly airplanes, but we're in the service business. So therefore, we're available. As an industry, as a community, as an airport, we can make ourselves available to service customers and plan future opportunities in those discussions. So one thing is, let's inform people, tell them the facts, and if you're uninformed, help us get you there. In terms of what's happening internationally, what's really exciting is that we're starting to get to a place that is now allowing for pre-COVID testing before a flight. And last week, American was able to announce it from our hub in Miami that we will actually, begin service into the Caribbean, several markets in the Caribbean, and we will pre-screen customers on a COVID test. And that will be done in collaboration with Central Departure Point, the US, into a foreign land. At the same time, we announced a similar program between Dallas and Hawaii, and we're working busily with our colleagues in London. And what this will allow for is a flight to be taken, and there's a reassurance that the passenger, the customer who's flying, is COVID-free. And that's going to require for a different approach to the quarantine requirements that are very restrictive today. So we're encouraged by what's happening. Look, this is an opportunity that's going to be right for the industry. It's one of those, if we clear the path forward for testing pre-departure, it's going to be applicable in many ways. But we have to be thoughtful about where tests are coming from, what types of tests we can use, and how they're going to be accepted by foreign countries in both, arrival departure sequencing. But we're excited. Look, I'll leave the thought on this. In April and May, we were busily closing things down. As we look at this conversation, we're focused on how we re-stimulate and reopen, access to foreign lands and reconnect people. Thanks.
Great. Dan, on that testing, is it practical? And you want to tell us a little bit about United's efforts on testing? We do have some questions from the audience on that as well. And then again, is there anything that we can do specifically to help the airlines?
Sure. So just in terms of what you can do, echo what Franco said, I think just learn a little bit more about what the airports and the airlines are doing to protect your health and safety. I think that will be key if you're at all on the edge about taking a flight or not. Again, just encourage you to read up on what we're doing, and then whatever you all can do to support our efforts in Washington, right? To get a payroll support extension, contact your representatives and advocate. That's great. In terms of the international question and testing, let me just take it kind of in that order, because the fact of the matter is you look around the globe, a lot of borders are closed, and you can only get back and forth to a country if you're a citizen. So if you want to go to Israel, you have to be a citizen of Israel to get there. If you want to come back from Israel to the United States, you have to be a U.S. citizen. So that's the challenge that we face. And as Franco said, we're intent on reopening markets, right? We think that's what we need to do, and testing is going to be critical to doing that. And we do think it's viable. We have Hawaii that's been mentioned before. That's going to be the first test case. Again, not an international market, but in many ways similar to the situations that would require a test. And I think all of us are providing some semblance of testing, and a pilot in Hawaii, a pilot in another location, and it all just starts to pick up speed. There's a lot of tests that are out there that have been approved by the FDA. And we need to get those into the market. We need to get those into the hands of our passengers so that we can really start to open things. We'd love to see some tests here in Chicago so we can start opening markets, whether it's somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Asia or somewhere else. And we do firmly believe that testing is going to be a critical component of that.
Great. And Dave, real quickly, in addition to the other topics, mask wearing, the policy for Southwest, and how's compliance going for you?
Yeah, it's going good. I would say there was a period of time early where we came out with our mask policy, and we allowed some medical exemptions. And to be candid, people would go on the web for $20 and print their exemption. And it was kind of the wild, wild west there for a few weeks. So we had to take a very direct approach and say, if you were over the age of 2, i.e. not a lap child, you have to wear the mask, and it's going to be a firm requirement for the duration of the flight, so you can't get on without it. Throughout the flight, our flight attendants do a great job almost treating it as a seatbelt and diffusing the situation. If a passenger, there are passengers out there every day that use that as a platform to make a statement, and it's unfortunate, but if they're going to do that, they're not flying Southwest. And hopefully someday when we don't have to wear masks, we can welcome them back. But it's not about their safety. It's about the safety of everyone around us, of course. So flight attendants are doing a beautiful job. And it has the last 6 to 8 weeks really kind of calmed down, and people kind of understand the routine.
Great. Well, I cannot thank you enough. I am so privileged to get to call all of you partners and enjoy such a great relationship with you. You have been incredible throughout this journey. And so on behalf of Mayor Lightfoot and again, the entire CDA team, we thank you. Jack, thank you so much for having us today. This was an incredible opportunity to hear from the experts. And so thank you for allowing me the privilege of serving as the moderator. Thanks, Jack.
Great. I loved it. This was great. Jamie, you've been a great partner for the entire business community and the airline industry. We greatly appreciate all you do. Dave Harvey of Southwest Airlines, Dan Lynch, Franco of United, and Franco Tedeschi of American Airlines, thank you for being here. This was great. I think the awareness that people get just from what you've all told us, the mask wearing, traveling, some of the innovation on testing, all this helps people get the trust that they need to get back in the air and fly safely again. And you all provided that background. And the Chamber will continue to do these things, the awareness. I know there was a question that we didn't get to about public transit and getting to the airport. The Chamber is going to have a similar forum and panel in a few weeks with our transit agencies to talk about trust in the transit agencies. This is all about economic recovery. The Chamber is there. We're meeting with the hospitality industry and the travel industry on a regular basis to make sure we're doing everything we can to advocate for the recovery. And finally, I want to thank the Chamber staff, particularly Amelia Salter, our Director of Programs, putting all this together. Let's give her a round of applause and all the Chamber staff. So thank you all for being here today. And we want to continue to grow this awareness so we can get our economy back on track again and get people back to work. Thank you again for being here. And thank you to our moderator and panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
See you soon at
Jamie.
the airport.
Yeah.